get to courage without rumbling with vulnerability. This is the first quote in Brené Brown's book, Dare to Lead. In her book, Brené Brown encourages her readers to rumble. She defines a rumble as a discussion, conversation, or meeting defined by a commitment to lean into vulnerability, to stay curious and generous, to stick with the messy middle of problem identification and solving, to take a break and circle back when necessary, to be fearless in owning our parts, and as psychologist Harriet Lerner teaches, to listen with the same passion with which we want to be heard. As we all know, we're living in some very trying times. Instead of there being one main hot topic to discuss in social media these days, it seems like there's a handful of hot topics to choose from. And any one of them that you choose can get us easily riled up and our blood boiling. As a body of believers, I believe more than ever, we are called to rumble with the topic of racism that is still in existence in our country and around the world today. For those of us who are white, it can be very hard to see and understand all of what our Black brothers and sisters have gone through and continue to go through. My objective in the interviews I have conducted is to invite you and I to rumble as we hear from a handful of people who share with us their real experiences. These are real people, real stories, and real feelings of what it's like to navigate as a Black woman or a Black man in our country. Rumbling is not meant to be easy. It's not meant to be fun, and it's certainly not meant to be comfortable. If I did these interviews right, it should leave you feeling a little uncomfortable. In fact, it might even make you want to turn me off before the interviews are even done. However, just like Brené coaches her readers, I too want to encourage you that when I say let's rumble, it cues us all to show up with an open heart and mind so that we can serve the work and each other, not our egos. Edgewood, as we listen together, may we lean into vulnerability. May we stay curious and generous. May we stick with the messy middle. May we be fearless in owning our parts. And may we listen with the same passion with which we want to be heard. With that being said, I invite you to join me as we rumble together. Right. Well, I am very excited today to have Monique Silas-Lee with me. Monique is a dear friend of mine who I enjoy. I treasure our coffee times or the times that I get to sneak into her office for a little bit and have a conversation as a dear friend. But those of you who don't know, Miss Lee is the principal of Charles Lunsford School number 19. And before I interview her with some questions, I just would like for you, Monique, to share with us where you grew up, a little bit about your family, and then share with us a little bit of your journey as your career has taken off.
Sure. As Kim has said, my name is Monique Silas-Lee, and I was born and reared in Rochester, New York, right in the city. I come from two parents who were teenage parents at the time, and I'm a first generational grandchild, so I'm the first on both sides of the family, which is also very exciting and noteworthy in my opinion. I was also educated in the city of Rochester. I went to a private school from grades K through 8th grade, and then I went to Wilson Magnet for high school. As a professional, I have obtained my teaching certification and admin certification, and I've started from a paraprofessional, and I've worked my way up to be a building principal. So I've had just about every job in between, which has also been very interesting as I've grown professionally.
Yeah, that's so cool. I did not know that.
Yeah.
And you're a mother, right?
I'm a mother of 3 wonderful sons.
Yes, to whom I've had the privilege of meeting 2 of them. One was a mentor for a year, and he was great. So you must be a proud mom of your 3
boys. Very. Thank you.
Good. All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. My first question for you is from some of the conversations that we've had together. I know that you and your boys have received a solid education. During that process, did you or your kids ever have experiences where you felt you were treated unfairly, both at the individual or at the larger structural level as people of color?
Um, Unfortunately, absolutely. As I stated before, I was very blessed to have gone to a private school for grades K through 8, but that didn't come without a lot of challenges. Being the only African American in most of my classes, grades K through 8th grade was a challenge within itself because I lived in the city. So I lived around people of color and my family and friends, but then every morning I got on a bus and went to school with Caucasian counterparts, teachers and students. So there was that constant feeling of um, uneasiness. Just, do I belong? Do I fit? Am I accepted? Am I tolerated? And unfortunately, I got to know that at a very young age. One experience that really stands out to me is in second grade. Um, I was a very solid reader, a very solid student, because my parents worked hard to make sure that I was right where I needed to be for each grade level. But unfortunately, I stuttered terribly. And that really started to come out in grades 2. And as I reflect back on it, I think a lot of it was due to feeling uncomfortable, not worthy, not like I belonged in that community necessarily. But nevertheless, I stuttered tremendously to the point where I couldn't even say the word "the." It would take like 30 seconds to get the word "the" out of my mouth. And back when I was in school, they did round robin reading. So most of the time I knew when my turn was coming. So I would read it, to myself over and over again. And I would be fairly confident when it got to me, I could read it. But then there came the time when the teacher would just call on me to read and I wouldn't know that it was my turn. And I remember one day she just cold called me and I just couldn't get the words out. So I stood there and, she basically said, read now or you need to leave. And I sat there and I didn't read because I knew I was going to stutter and get laughed at. So I decided to leave. And then my father was called. And to make a long story short, during the conference, the teacher basically shared that she didn't think I could read. And the only reason I could read when it was my turn was because I knew it was going to be my turn. And the conversation was, she needs to repeat this grade. And so to feel that doubt, like the adult in front of you didn't believe or didn't know you enough to know that you really were capable and knew how to do it, and wanted to be very punitive instead of uplifting, is a time I would never forget.
Wow. Wow. Let me ask you with that, you talk about being in two different worlds. Was there ever a sense of when you came back home feeling like you didn't belong because of the education track you were on?
Yep. So when I came home, I was often teased as, you talk like a white girl. Um, Stop sitting up so straight, stop being so proper, or not even that they would say stop it. They would just call it out and bring attention to it, which is what I needed to do when I went to school, because if I didn't speak properly or if I slouched, then I was called out there for it too. So it was definitely challenging, but I must honestly also say that although I was teased for it when I went back into my community, I also knew that the teasing was still out of love, if that makes any sense. I knew I was being called out for it, but I knew I was still accepted more in that realm than in the educational realm.
Wow. How about your son's experience? As a mother, we always have that protective part of us, that mama bear. Did you ever feel like, I'm sure, did they have experiences similar to yours?
They did. They went to private school for a little bit, but then being a teacher in the city, I really felt strongly that they needed to be in the city because we lived in the city, and I valued the city. I loved teaching in the city. I loved my students, and I wanted them to have the same experience. So when I worked at a city school, all three of them came with me to work, and they attended that school, which we absolutely loved. But then there came a time when we did transfer to a suburban area. And unfortunately, there were some incidences that happened out there that the boys reflect on, and it's a little bothersome to them. One that stands out for me, being a parent of an African American son in a suburban district, was that when it came time for teacher conferences or field trips, I would always make a point of going and attending and being supportive of them. And I would get comments like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you got back to school so fast away from the city." And I would say, "No, we walked because we live 2 blocks down from the school, and this is our neighborhood school." Or the comment, "Oh, you must be so thankful and grateful that your kids are in the urban suburban program, which is a great program, and it has done wonders and magnificent things for kids all over the city. But I've already explained to you that we live in the neighborhood and we're not a part of that program." And then there was another thing that stood out for one of my sons in particular. He scored a perfect score on his New York State math exam. Very bright little boy. And, you know, at first it was insinuated that he cheated. Then once we jumped over that hurdle, then it was insinuated that he was lucky. Once we got over that hurdle and I asked for him to be moved to an advanced math class, then it was, well, his track record or his history doesn't show him to be a strong enough student to go into an advanced math class, although there were students that hadn't scored as well or hadn't had a better track record that were being recommended for advanced classes. So that's something that really troubled him. And he actually mentioned to me, why should I work hard when no matter what I do, I'm not going to be acknowledged for it, or it's not really the work that matters. It's who you know and how well they like you as a person if you are able to move into that advanced course track.
Wow. When you talk about, seeing these experiences that you've had in the education, and with your sons, what then made you, is it because of these experiences that made you want to have a career in education, or what drove that path that you took?
It was absolutely the struggles that I had in education, and not for me academic struggles, but the struggle of being seen as a person, as a human being. I felt like I was always there. I was quiet. I was mild mannered. I didn't cause trouble, but I wasn't seen. I didn't feel like my second grade teacher saw me as a human. She saw me as a student sitting over there who was refusing to do what she asked, as being defiant. And really, I was crying inside, like, I really want to read. I've read this paragraph 100 times since we've been sitting here, but the words won't come out of my mouth. She didn't know me enough to know that I stuttered, and that was an issue for me to be, cold called on. And I just wanted to make sure that students were seen, that not only were they well educated, but they were seen as people, and they were taught to be citizens and what it means to be a humane person. Those things are just very, very important for me to ensure that students move forward in their paths.
Mm. How about as you reflect on education that you and your kids have received, in contrast with what you see as a principal of an inner city school? What do you see as some of the major roadblocks or difficulties that many of the students in the city have to overcome to experience a quality education?
Well, there's a lot. There's the whole equity piece in my eyes. I've seen what my boys have experienced in their education, how equity looks in a suburban district, and then to work in the city where the equity isn't always there. Yes, I know there's two different types of families that we're talking about, but we're talking about the commonality of a quality education as a United States citizen. And that doesn't happen at all in my opinion. And also for me, there's probably the more important piece of relationships. It just really hurts when students of color or even just inner city students aren't valued, in my opinion, as much as suburban students are valued, or even given the benefit of the doubt in various situations. For an example, bringing back up that the incident that happened with my son, he wasn't given the benefit of the doubt to try that advanced level course, although he had proven himself. And I feel like kids in the city aren't given the benefit of the doubt either. It's always on the negative side. Oh, he can't do it. Oh, she'll fail. Or, instead of saying, give them that chance, they'll move it forward, they'll rise to the occasion. We always come in with the negative side of things as the norm instead of the positive side of things being the norm.
Mm. Well, I have some statements I'd like to read to you. You have not seen these, and I really just want you to complete the statement with what comes to your mind when I say these. So the first statement is, I wish my white friends would know that if they were living in my shoes, they would experience
The real world. It's not what you think or what you would hope it would be. Gosh, it's painful to think that when you go places, you're judged immediately by the way you look, by my natural hair, the looks that you get when someone realizes that you're an educated woman is not a smile, it's a really, almost like they wish you weren't in that role or you haven't had that achievement. Yeah.
That's hard. One thing I wish my white friends would do if they truly cared about me is
be willing to have the uncomfortable conversations. Be willing to say or ask what it is they really want to know.
Have you had people do that or not often?
Not very often. I can really count on one hand how many people have had the courage to honestly say or ask what was on their mind when it came to race.
I am reminded the most that I'm not seen as an equal to my white friends when
I'm questioned around my decisions in front of my counterparts when they don't experience the same judgment openly. I don't know if you need more details. So if I'm sitting in a meeting and a white counterpart asks a question, the question is respected and answered respectfully. Whereas I've had experiences when I ask a similar question, it's not even acknowledged that I've asked the question, or it's downplayed like the question isn't important. And that's happened, I can't tell you how many times. And it's sort of, I want to say trained, that's not the right word, but it's caused me to pause when I'm in a group that I have when I have a question that I know pertains to everyone because it has happened so routinely.
Wow.
So it's almost like it's not almost like you're not an equal to your colleague.
And lastly, what would you say are one or two things that, as a mother of 3 Black boys, you have had to teach them that would differ in how and what I might teach my son?
This is hard to say, but it's true. You have to be able to take on 2 separate personas. The one that when you're at home, you can be you can have fun, you can be loud, you can say what you feel. But when you walk out into that community, you had better be reserved. You had better know how to speak articulately. You had better know how to behave when you're pulled over. You had better know how to behave when you're walking by a Caucasian woman. You had better know how to handle yourself when you're doing those things. Because unfortunately, if you don't, it can be life or death for you.
There's no room for error.
No.
Well, Monique, I appreciate you being raw and honest and sharing with us just a glimpse of the pain that you've experienced yourself and as a mother, and really as you've witnessed day in and day out with the families that you serve in the city. So thank you for taking time with us to share your heart.
Thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
All right.